In a world full of shadows, secrets don't stay buried for long. Open the door, step into the unknown. This is the Lots Full Podcast.
At 508 North 2nd Street in Atchison, Kansas, the facts are more interesting than the legend. The house is real. The Finney family is real. Dr. Charles C. Finney is real. But the most famous origin story attached to the house, a little girl named Sallie dying during a botched emergency operation in Dr. Finney's downstairs office, has not been verified in the publicly accessible historical record I could trace. And welcome back to the Lots Full Podcast. I'm joined today by Arkansas Dave. I'm your host, Dakota. And Dave was too chicken shit to do this one after we recorded the last episode.
Hey, man, listen, you know I'm sensitive to this stuff. I didn't do this stuff in the daylight hours, okay? You see the shit I
just in case anybody was wondering, it is daylight hours outside. But this is one that I've been wanting to do for a while, mainly because I wanted Dave to hear this EVP that we're going to touch on later on. And I figured why not get his recording of his reaction to it on camera, you know? Now, Dave, I did let you listen to it ahead of time, but I want us to kind of break down, and you don't know any of the debunking efforts that have gone into that EVP or whatnot, but
no.
But guys, I was more prepared this time. I'm actually wearing one of the shirts. If y'all can see it, let me block out that light. There you go. There you go. Take a look at how sexy I look in that shit. Yeah. And for those that didn't watch to the end of last one, these are the tumblers. This is the Howler design. It's got the nice Dogman imagery on here with the full moon, and I keep moving it the wrong fucking way with the Lots Full Podcast right there. Still moving it the wrong way. Stay curious, stay out there. And we are out there, folks.
Yeah, mentally and trying to get out there physically.
Yeah.
But y'all do remember, though, like, when y'all do buy the shirts and hats, keychains, tumblers, stuff like that, it's going to help us buy equipment, cameras and drones and stuff like that, so we can go out and do documentaries and start getting that going.
Yep.
So.
Yep. This is not to fund our pocketbooks. This is to fund more content for you beautiful bastards.
Yeah. And what Dakota also ain't telling you, he's willing to spend time with his best buddy, tell you. Well.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. I sent Randall this video on Facebook earlier. I think I sent it to you too. It said, not gonna lie, bro, it's been a while since we've done anything irresponsible.
Yeah. Last October.
Yeah, we need to do something.
We were mostly responsible. I mean, we weren't in public.
That is true. I guess the irresponsibility came into effect when Natalie and Jacob were down here, and me and Jacob were chasing Bigfoot. I mean, a telephone pole.
Right.
Are you there? You
eyes in the trees.
Yep.
Poor Jacob.
Oh, shit.
Poor Jacob.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording here for a second. Holy shit. Sorry about that, folks. We've been stopped recording for a few minutes, but y'all won't know it. Yeah. Big news comes through. You got to stop what you're doing. Which that reminds me, I want to start doing this. Anyway, what we stopped for was what we stopped for was, as anybody that knows me knows, I'm a big NASCAR fan. Two-time NASCAR champion Kyle Busch just died. So that was pretty shocking.
Well, I know you're a big NASCAR fan. I don't really watch it. I know the name Kyle Busch, but
Yeah. Prub has died.
which it'll hit the NASCAR community pretty hard, and
Oh, yeah.
there'll be a lot of stuff about it. But
So going back to recording, though, what I want to do is at the beginning of every episode, I want to start looking at the pizza tracker. So
the picture tracker's probably at DEFCON 5.
Pull it up right here. This isn't loading. I don't know why. But if you scroll down, see, here's the Pentagon, and here's all the pizza places around it. Nothing really anomalous right now. And for those of you that don't know, there's a theory that when a major military operation is going on, the pizza places around the Pentagon get extra busy. So,
Hey, remember, pizza's cheap, feeds a lot of people.
exactly. It makes sense. But anyway, you ready to get into this? For those that don't know, we're going to be covering the Sallie house this episode.
Yeah, and I've looked into this a little bit when we were going to do it last week, and me and Dakota, we've talked about it, and it's a little freaky.
Yes, yes, it is.
So, and
Wow.
as Dakota said, this would be one of those that he wouldn't blame me if I set out, because
Yeah, so
I'm a
we
little
were
bit shit.
discussing the possibility of doing a documentary here. And I have done ghost hunting in the past, and I told Dave this is one of the few locations that if he looked at me and said, dude, I'm not going into that fucking house, I won't even give him shit about it. Because as you're going to find out, I'm not convinced it's not a demon. And
So,
I will, to an extent, expose myself to that shit. I won't expose somebody else. Not
exactly.
knowing.
I'll stay outside the car and I'll update you if I see him come flying through the window.
Yeah.
I'll be eating Taco Bell, drinking Sonic drink.
All right, well, let's get into it, shall we?
We can get into it all you want to, but you're going to lose.
No, I'm talking the story.
I know, Dakota. Talking shit.
The strongest documentary footing for the house is the Finney family itself. Kansas historical and tourism materials place the house's construction in the late 19th century, often between 1867 and 1871. Dave, while I do this, do you want to share your screen real quick and pull up pictures?
I can. Let's see here.
Okay.
Hit share screen.
Are you doing it on, or you're not doing it on your phone? No. Okay.
No, I'm on entire screen.
Either entire screen or just a tab or just a window, whatever. Just pull up pictures while I'm reading this. I think that'll be good.
Okay, hang on.
Jamie, pull it up.
Got it. All right.
Okay. Oh, look. Google searches number one thing. Kyle Busch, passing. Damn. This is wild.
All right, so now this is the Sallie house. It just pulls up and everything.
Yeah, if you want to just pull up pictures of it.
So let's go over to images.
And you can like scroll through the images while I'm talking.
If I can make them bigger. move
You
you over
can
here.
close that. It won't stop the recording.
Close this.
Yes. That's just
Okay.
picture in picture. You just won't be able to see me.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
All right. So, and y'all, I do apologize. I'm a little
We all are. We all are.
retarded when it comes to technology, and I'm just now getting used to playing on a computer.
All right. You ready for me to continue?
Yep.
Okay.
Go for it.
A contemporaneous 1918 biographical sketch says Kate Catherine Spinney and Agnes True were living at 508 North 2nd Street, while Dr. Charles C. Finney owned his home at 510 North 2nd Street. That detail matters because it complicates the standard retelling that treats 508 as simply Dr. Finney's office/house. A modern local history synthesis goes further and states that there is no substantial evidence that Finney conducted his practice inside 508, and that no records for a patient named Sallie dying there have been located. The haunting story that made the house famous is much later. The first publicly documented wave of claims that I could verify begins with Tony and Deborah Pickman in the early 1990s. Their account included rearranged toys, electrical anomalies, good lord, words are hard, cold spots, scratches, and welts on Tony, a reported apparition of a little girl, and later televised investigations by the TV show Sightings. From there, the story expanded through cable TV dramatizations, sorry guys, words are fucking hard, documentaries, paranormal travel programming, and podcasts, until the house became both a haunting case and a tourism brand. The single most important caution for an accurate podcast is this: the house history and the haunting legend should be treated as two overlapping but separate timelines. The house has a traceable family history. The ghost story has a traceable media history. They are not the same thing, and most weak tellings of the Sallie house collapse them into one. Hang on. Okay. This episode was built the hard way. From addresses, names, maps, obituaries, episode pages, and the places where the legend does not line up cleanly. We prioritize publicly accessible primary and near primary material over retellings. The load-bearing historical sources are the 1918 biographical entry for Charles C. Finney, obituary and memorial transcripts that preserve newspaper language about residents at 508 and 510 North 2nd, newspaper snippets showing later occupants at 508, and Kansas historical tourism materials that preserve local claims while acknowledging evidentiary gaps. For the haunting and media timeline, the most important sources are the official podcast episode pages that we will get into, and blog posts, the Kansas Magazine First Person Overnight account, listings for later media adaptations, and a detailed PDF review of the original Sightings coverage. I did not find any publicly accessible 19th or early 20th century medical record, court filing, coroner's report, or newspaper account confirming that a girl named Sallie died during surgery inside 508 North 2nd. I also did not find publicly accessible verbatim official text transcript of the podcast episode that we will be covering later.
Okay.
There are also meaningful disagreements within public sources. Even sympathetic paranormal and historic retellings do not fully agree on the exact build year of the house or on the exact number of return visits made by the Sightings team. Rather than smoothing over those conflicts, we will flag them when they matter. That makes the uncertainty part of the story instead of a problem. That makes the uncertainty part of the story instead of a problem to hide. All right. Before there was a ghost story, do what?
I was going to ask, is the hamster up there hopping off the wheel from time to time?
Dude, he's fucking struggling, bro. He is struggling today. And it's been like that all day. It's not just on the recording. So, all right. Before there was a ghost story, there was a family address history. And that history points to something more complicated than the usual one-line legend. The safest historical description of the Sallie house is that it is a late 19th century Finney family residence on North 2nd Street. Kansas Tourism Materials places construction between 1867 and 1871, and a 1908 Sanborn map sheet for Atchison confirms the block was already built up by then. The most important contemporary document is the 1918 biography of Dr. Charles C. Finney. It states that his mother, Kate Catherine Finney, quote, now makes her home at 508 North 2nd Street, and that Agnes Finney True was also living at 508, while Dr. Finney owns his home at 510 North 2nd Street. Those address lines are among the clearest pieces of non-paranormal evidence in the entire Sallie house story.
Okay.
So we've got a little timeline here that I'm going to go over. So roughly 1856, Michael C. Finney family arrives in Atchison, Kansas. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Later, Kansas Tourism Materials tie the house construction to the Finney family in the late 1860s, early 1870s. State Tourism Materials say the house was built between 1867 and 1871. Biography says Kate Finney now makes her home at 508 North 2nd. Agnes True Finney is living at 508, and Dr. Finney owns his home at 510, and that's in 1918. Also in 1918, William A. True died at the home at 508. 1939, Agnes Finney True, or Agnes True Finney, or Agnes Finney True. I don't know which one it is. I kept seeing both.
Okay.
She dies at 508 in 1939. So we've got 2 deaths confirmed. Okay.
Okay.
1947, Dr. Charles C. Finney dies. It references 508, the obituary does, but it says he died at the residence at 510. Okay?
Uh-huh.
1953, Mrs. Dale Skelton dies at 508 North 2nd Street. 1966, Ethel Anderson moves into 508 North 2nd Street. She owned the home up until 1990. And then Tony and Deborah Pickman moved in 1993, and they moved out in 1994. And that's where the paranormal activity started. Going back to Ethel Anderson. Do what?
You've had, what, 4 or 5 deaths in this house already?
I think you froze, dude.
Correct.
Are you there?
Hello?
Hello? Hello? I'm going to stop the recording here. All right, we had a little technical difficulties, but continue, Dave.
Yeah. We got silenced, apparently.
Yeah.
So, where I was at is, I think we're at, what, 4 or 5 deaths in this house at this point?
So we've got... We've got 2 deaths. Mrs. Dale Skelton just lived there. Ethel Anderson just lived there. Charles Finney owned 508, but he also lived at 510, which is right next door, and he died at 510.
Okay.
So we've got 1, 2. Yeah, we've got William True and Agnes True Finney, or Finney True, whichever one it is. Those are the only ones that died. Confirmed. That are confirmed to have died. Okay? So you ready to get into the hauntings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's get into the haunting.
The haunting claims do not begin in the 1870s. They begin where documentation gets much better, with people still alive to interview, television crews to film them, and podcasts that preserve their own evidence trail. One of the most important historical pivots in the case is the name Sallie. According to the local history synthesis on Clio, the Pickmans contacted earlier tenants after strange events began. One former tenant said her daughter had an imaginary friend named Sallie, and the Pickmans began calling the entity by that name. In other words, the famous name appears in the modern haunting narrative before any verified historical child named Sallie is established in the documentary record. So, going into the timeline here, early 1993, Tony and Deborah Pickman, they begin capturing photos with blurring or discoloration. The pictures turn upside down, toys get piled up in the nursery, lights and appliances start switching on and off, TV interference, cold static areas following people through rooms. Then in the summer of 1993, they find stuffed bears arranged in a circle. Later, a bear repeatedly falls when left alone. I left my door open and let fucking flies in, dude.
Well, go close it.
Oh, no, it's open. Or it's closed now. But I left it open earlier while I was carrying shit in. 1993 to 1994, the stuffed animals reportedly rotate and move unnaturally. Also, between 1993 and 1994, Tony Pickman begins finding scratches, welts, bite marks, burning, or singeing of clothing, and begins being targeted physically more than Deborah or the child. They did have a kid at the time. Okay? Then Tony Pickman sees the apparition of a young girl and later sketches the figure. And that's the famous image of Sallie. Then sightings comes in, and your witnesses for this are Tim White, Al Ruber, Carrie Gaynor, Peter James, and the Pickman family. They experience electrical interference, cold spots, static pockets, EVPs, fresh scratches and welts on Tony are filmed on camera. Okay? And these sightings episodes are on YouTube. Anybody can find them. You just have to look up the names of the family, Tony and Deborah Pickman, and then sightings. And then in 1994, the sightings crew and the Pickman family, Tony's shirt catches fire during a return visit by sightings.
That's not normal.
Yeah. This happens only to Tony Pickman in 1994, and this is what caused them to move out. Unseen force reportedly tries to push Tony off the upstairs railing, and they left soon after that.
So what happened to the previous owner of this house? Like, they sell it to him?
Ethel Anderson, yes, she sold it to them.
And she lived there from when to when?
She moved in 1966, and she moved out in 1990. And the Pickmans barely made it a year.
Yeah, something didn't add up because you're saying nothing got reported prior.
Prior to the Pickmans, no paranormal activity is reported.
So something happened between 66 and 93.
Correct. Well, really, between 90 and 93, because Ethel Anderson lived there until 90, and she said the whole time she was there, nothing happened.
So where'd she go after 1990?
She moved out and then had the house listed and then sold it in 93.
So, house stayed vacant for roughly 3 years, which gives time for people to come in and do stupid shit.
Yeah, 100%.
And at this point, we're like Satanic Church. Stuff's been rolling pretty heavily, which we've done an episode over that. Or something followed them from their previous address.
Yep.
Do we know where this family originally come from?
I do not. I didn't even think to look that up.
Okay. All good questions, though.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All fantastic questions. The Sallie house, I'm reading my personal notes. The original sightings coverage appears to be the true launch point of the Sallie house as a national story. The Ghosts of Ohio Review describes the program as what first put the house on the paranormal map. Notes multiple broadcasts and says the investigators returned at least several times. Cleo's local history entry says the story gained public attention in the summer of 1994 after a medium connected with the family passed the case to Fox TV. Those two accounts broadly agree on the point that matters. The house's legend became national through television, not through 19th century documentation. That media cycle also fixed certain disputed ideas in the public imagination. The child's spirit identity became more definite. The doctor's surgery backstory became more cinematic. And the contrast between playful child and something darker became the dominant dramatic frame. Later productions largely inherited that structure instead of rebuilding the case from documentary history outward. So the doctor story that I keep referencing, basically the way it goes is that when Charles Finney when he was still operating as a doctor, that he lived in 508, which we know documented, not true. So there's problem one. And he ran his doctor's office out of the downstairs basement, or out of the downstairs area. Okay?
Right. Which wasn't abnormal for late 1800s, early 1900s.
Yeah, late 19th century, early 20th century, that was common. But basically, middle of the night, this mother brings her daughter, Sallie, to the house. Sallie is suffering from appendicitis. Okay? The doctor, rushing to save the child, does not wait on the anesthesia to kick in. And because he didn't wait, she's like squirming around and stuff as he's cutting on her. Which I get it. and that causes him to botch the surgery, and she bleeds out there in the house.
I mean, quite understandable, but at the same time, it's also a medical malpractice.
Yeah, I mean, it's an accident, but yeah. It doesn't claim, the story doesn't claim that the doctor did it intentionally or anything nefarious, just he was in such a hurry to try to save her.
Yeah.
Now, going back to the issues with that story, Dr. Finney lived at 510. He never lived at 508. He owned 508, but the True family lived there. There's no record of a girl named Sallie ever being there. Okay? Ever. There's not even a record of this Sallie being buried in Atchison.
It could have been a town outside of Atchison.
Atchison is, at least in this time period, was in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Now, what year was this in?
1860s to 1930s, I'd say. Somewhere around there.
Oh. And what I'm doing, I'm looking up real quick.
Yeah, you're good.
So, I'm assuming this is in Atchison County too.
I guess. I don't know.
I'm looking for town names. Google, not. Let's see. Because basically what it's telling me, it's like a frontier town.
Yeah, it really was back then.
In 1860, let's see. Another thing, let's see. What this also makes me curious of. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Go backwards one. So we're all familiar with the Oregon Trail. Okay, so guess what cut through Atchison, Kansas? Or near there?
Oregon Trail?
I think so. So in it or close to there is what this is going to be. So I'm wondering if Oregon Trail 1836 to 1869.
And the house supposedly started being built in 1867.
So
Sorry, I'm texting my dad right now.
oh no, you're fine. So I mean, this is very feasible in that time frame that this could have been a family passing through.
Yeah. But you'd still think, especially with it being a frontier town, that they would bury Sallie there, instead of carrying the body with them.
You would think.
I mean, that was a common thing back then. Somebody dies, you bury them where they died,
Yeah. Yeah, so Atchison was on the working trail.
Yeah. It's possible. But now we get to the artifact that made me want to talk about this case. File 10, as it will be called from here on out. The podcast Astonishing Legends. If anybody listening has never heard that, they do a fantastic job. They go into depth on these stories basically the same way we do, but they go so much further than we ever could. And I mean, they'll do 6-7 hours on just one case. Fantastic. But they also look at things from a skeptic's perspective. Kind of like what Dave does.
Hey, that's what I'm here for, man.
I don't. And that's what I think puts us. I think that's what puts us or separates us from them. We're similar, but you've got both perspectives. But their links identify episode 124 as the Sallie House installment with file 10, while episode 125 serves as the public follow-up that foregrounds technical discussion. The official show notes around part 3 list the key public nodes in that debate. Josh Lewis of Hope Paranormal, Ed Primo of Primo Forensics Psychoacoustics, NPR's Laurel Yanny Explainer, Ham Radio Outlet, and the Panasonic RRDR60 recorder, and a video where Josh Lewis reportedly captures a similar sound around the 610 mark. What I could verify publicly is not a full verbatim transcript of the EVP, and y'all will see why. On the official episode pages, the accessible text gives us the label Track 10 EVP. A note that Josh Lewis translates what he thinks he hears on it, and public commentary from the hosts and analyst Ed Primo. In a later AstonishmentLegends.com blog post comparing another Sallie House EVP, the host says File 10 seems to contain, quote, a version of my own voice, even though he was not in the room, and describes File 10 as the EVP some listeners would call too blurry. That is the strongest public textual framing I could verify without an unpublished transcript or raw forensics. The publicly documented debunking record around File 10 is best understood as a set of competing partial explanations rather than a single decisive refutation. All right. I'm going to now play File 10 for you. And we'll listen to the whole thing and then come back and discuss what we think we hear. And then we'll get into the debunking.
Okay. File 10, putting this down. I'm going to leave this here for about 5 minutes.
I'm going to go ahead and stop it. I will start it over. So the hosts went here. They were doing a thing about Amelia Earhart, who, if I remember right, lives or grew up in Atchison. Okay. While they were there, they were like, hey, this haunted house is here. Let's go check it out. And they had this Panasonic's DR60 recorder. Now, the recorder is voice activated. Okay. So if you leave it in a room for 10 minutes with nobody in the room, you should hear you putting it down and starting the recording, and then immediately you picking it up and ending the recording with nothing in between, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they did.
That's how it's
they
supposed
went
to
up.
work.
Yeah, they went up into the nursery, put it in there, and they left the entire house. Okay? So what you're going to hear at the beginning is the one of the hosts, Scott Philbrook, he's putting the recorder down, talking about it, the way you do EVPs. So, Dave, I know you never ghost hunted. When you're doing an EVP, it's important to tag things, okay? So, like if you're recording and you're walking, the whole time you're walking, you need to be saying, I am walking, those are my footsteps, that kind of stuff. That way, whoever's listening back knows, oh, that's not paranormal, okay?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm putting the recorder down. Now I am walking away from the recorder. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what you're going to hear at the beginning. And then you're going to hear him come back in at the very end. So this should have been a real quick thing. It's not. And they were gone for about 10, 15 minutes. So I'm going to press play now.
Okay. File 10, putting this down. I'm going to leave this here for about 5 minutes. If there's anything you want to say, any message you would like to share with the world, leave it on this recorder, and we will share it. Leaving now, closing the door. No one else is in this room this time. Coming back into the room. I'm going to take the recorder. Thank you for your time. Wishing you peace.
Okay. So that was file 10. Dave, what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are this, sir. Sounds like a bunch of static to me, but also sounds like CB radio interference.
Okay.
Now we had talked about this, and you had said that this has been taken to a ham radio specialist or something like that, and they said, "Hey,
We're going to get into that. Mm-hmm.
yeah." So I really can't make anything out of it, and I've listened to it a couple times.
So I agree. It sounds like static, but it also sounds like in the static there's like the cadence of of speech. Okay. Now, I have heard 100 at minimum EVPs recorded on the DR60. That's typical of how they sound. It sounds very staticky, very gravelly. In fact, there's a theory that that's why the DR60 got discontinued, because it's from the 90s. And a ton of people were sending it back to Panasonic, reporting that every time they recorded on it, they would catch screaming. That wasn't there. Now, Panasonic has not come out and said, yes, that's true, that's why we discontinued it, but those recorders back in the 90s when they came out, they were $40-$50, you know?
That's a lot of money back then.
You know how much they go for now?
Probably about $1,200.
$3,500 on eBay. You looking it up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Sorry, my wife was asking me a question. What was it? DR60?
Panasonic DR60, yep.
Well, was this a manual or is this the actual recorder? Well, this one's $16.95.
The actual recorder?
Yeah, but I'm not real sure. Let me see.
If it's the actual recorder, you might want to jump on that shit.
I think it's the instruction manual.
But getting into the debunking, okay? So we're going to start with hardware artifact hypothesis, okay? This was put out by Ed Premio of Premio Forensics, okay? And he examined the recorder and considered whether the sound came from overload or clipping, okay?
Mm-hmm.
He then, after tearing apart the recorder and looking at it, he said he could not get the recorder to reproduce that type of sound. Period. Just couldn't get it to happen again. Okay?
Okay.
So then we go into the comparative anomalous sound check by Josh Lewis and Hope Paranormal. He compared file 10 with a similar sound reportedly captured in another investigation. Public materials say Josh captured a similar sound and offered his own interpretation. Similarity is not source identification. It broadens the category of the sound, but does not tell us whether the cause is mundane, manipulated, environmental, or paranormal. And then we go into psychoacoustic ambiguity critique. Okay. So this was publicly acknowledged by the hosts of Astonishing Legends. They framed the problem through psychoacoustics and the Laurel Yanny phenomena. Listeners hear different words in ambiguous audio. The show notes explicitly point to psychoacoustics and word hearing ambiguity as relevant context. This explains why transcripts disagree. It does not explain how the anomalous sound got onto the recorder in the first place. And then there's RF or signal bleed exploration. Okay. Astonishing Legends championed this. And then they went to ham radio outlet and contacted Panasonic. Okay. They explored whether the device or environment might be susceptible to unwanted signal pickup. The accessible public materials confirmed that they explored this line of inquiry, but I did not locate a public written conclusion that decisively matched file 10 to a broadcast or RF source. Meaning that in all the recordings of broadcasts or RF interference, none of it matched. Even interference that comes onto a Panasonic DR60.
Okay.
Then we go into mimicry and media dialogue. Okay. This considered whether EVPs can echo investigators' voices or media phrases. The later blog says File 10 sounds like a version of my voice and defends the possibility that EVPs mimic. The hosts publicly argued that even recognizable language or voice-like similarity does not automatically falsify an EVP. keeps the debate open, but it does not solve provenance. Mimicry is descriptive, not diagnostic. The most rigorous way to script File 10 is to resist both temptations. One, signal origin, and two, perception. Public record supports a narrower line. File 10 is an anomalous, heavily argued, technically unresolved recording that became important because Astonishing Legends documented their attempts to challenge it instead of merely presenting it as evidence. So here's the cleanest ending I can defend. The Sallie house is almost certainly a real Finney family house with a traceable address history. The story of a child named Sallie dying there remains unverified in the accessible historical record. The Pickman's 1990s experiences are the first well-documented public source of the haunting legend. Television turned that legend national. Podcasts turned one audio file into a new evidentiary puzzle. And File 10, after all the public attempts to explain it, still occupies the most uncomfortable place of all. Not proved, not disproved, and therefore still powerful.
Well, here's my thought process on this. I kind of already brought this up.
Mm-hmm.
So, 1990 to 1993, house is vacant.
Correct.
No prior experiences had happened to 93, as we know of. So my thing is, one, the family that moved in 93 had something follow them from where they came from. Or B, somebody went in the house fooling around with stuff they shouldn't have been fooling around with. Or C, which could also be the most likely explanation, is they made this up and then got a bunch of media attention.
Yeah.
Which one, I do not know. So, and they could also been looking for a way. Yeah.
Now let's say. Do what?
Go ahead.
No,
they could also been looking for a way to get out of that house in general for financial strains or whatever.
100%. 100%. My counter argument to that, okay? Just playing devil's advocate. How do you explain the welts and the scratches and stuff like that appearing on camera on Tony? And then how do you explain Tony's shirt catching on fire on camera?
Well, you ever heard of what do you call it?
Spontaneous combustion?
Well, spontaneous combustion, but also sodium metal.
Yeah. Now, question. Is or is not spontaneous combustion in and of itself a paranormal phenomenon?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So would you then say that is paranormal?
You could. I agree on that. But like I said, sodium metal.
Yeah. I agree.
Doesn't take much water.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have been sweating and set it off.
Yeah, it's possible. I don't remember what Tony did for a living. Maybe he worked around sodium metal. Don't know. So. Now, for me, File 10 is always creepy. Like, I still get the creeps hearing it. Not to the extent I did the first time I heard it, but File 10 is creepy.
Right.
I definitely feel like I could I'd bet every dollar I had that there is speech in there. You know, yes, it sounds like static. I would bet every dollar I have that there's speech in there, in the static.
Well, I mean, to get a better understanding of it, you're going to have to like download the audio
Yeah.
and then put it into like an audio mixer
Yeah.
and try to take some of the static out and play with it and play it backwards and see what you might be able to hear.
Now, I didn't include this on here because I personally don't hear it. Astonishing Legends did claim that when you play the file backwards, there is one point where they can hear their own names.
Yeah, which is weird.
They played it several times backwards. I didn't hear it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. I'm also tone deaf, so.
Yeah. But they could also be saying it's, oh, hey, we hear your names for views.
I mean, yes.
I'm not saying they're lying.
But again, counter argument. Astonishing Legends has never done that. I've listened to majority of their episodes. They have never done anything. Like, there's been multiple times where they've supposedly caught evidence, and they've gone out of their way to say this is not real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just like they did here.
By the book all the time, I mean, there's nothing to say that they're going to do that. And I agree with you on that, if that's the case.
Yeah.
But to me, I just hear static.
Well, I highly recommend anybody listening go and check out the 4-part Astonishing Legends episode on this. It's titled Ghost in the Machine. Very compelling, very exciting. And like I said, they dive a lot deeper into the history and stuff like that than I did.
Now, there is something that you had told me about this house, and you hadn't brought it up.
You talking about the guy that did the satanic rituals in the basement?
Yeah, you said there's a pentagram burned in the bottom.
Yeah, so all of that happened after the Pickmans left in '94.
Okay, so.
Yeah. That guy never claimed that anything happened to him in the house, but knowing what the Pickmans went through, he went there and did his satanic rituals in the basement.
Trying to provoke or whatever.
Yeah. So, but with that, guys, I mean, it's up to y'all to decide what you believe, ultimately, just like any of this shit. I don't know. I don't know what File 10 is. I wish I did. I wish I knew what the answers to the Sallie house were. I don't. But it's fun to speculate.
Listen, if we had the answers to everything, we'd be in the stars by now.
Well, I told Derek many moons ago, I know that when I die, I'll meet God and I'll be able to ask him all my questions and shit.
Mm-hmm.
But while I'm here on Earth, if I had the answers to all my questions, I'd be bored out of my fucking mind.
That's true. That is true.
Like, yes, I dig into this shit because I want to learn about it, but if I woke up tomorrow and instantly had all of that knowledge and knew the answers to all of these questions, I'd be bored. I think it's the quest for knowledge that excites me more than the knowledge itself.
Right. Some of the knowledge might be not very useful.
Well, none of this is very useful in your day-to-day life, but
I mean,
it's
my wife
interesting.
said I'm a wealth of useless knowledge half the time until she needs something.
Yep.
For a trivia question, she's like, "Hey, what's this?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's this."
Yep. 100%.
And my daughter's the same thing. So, but guys, I think we're going to end it. Y'all watch and everything. See what you think.
Important thing is go check out the Astonishing Legends episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to agree with Dakota on that. I'll have more than what we are right now. So, y'all have fun. We'll see you next time.
Later, guys.